On a wall in India, in one of St. Teresa of Calcutta's homes for children, she had painted the words of a poem entitled Paradoxical Commandments, a poem written by Dr. Kent Keith. The first words of that poem are these: people are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. Love them anyway. That is a challenging message Jesus is giving to us in the gospel today. Very challenging message. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. We've seen examples in the scriptures of that, where Jesus was so falsely accused, beaten, and eventually crucified. Had every reason to be bitter and to be angry, but he looked down from the cross. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The first martyr, Stephen, for professing his faith, was stoned to death. And he pleaded that God would forgive them. And we saw the example in the reading today of David. Every right to have killed Saul, had two major close opportunities to do so, but he didn't do it. He did not want to act on his violence. If we are honest, we think of those examples and we think of the words that we heard in the gospel. This teaching of Jesus is not easy to swallow. It is perhaps one of his most difficult teachings. We are more comfortable in hearing about Jesus blessing and calling the little children to him. We're more comfortable reading about Jesus curing the sick, welcoming home the prodigal son, promising eternal life and encouraging us to love one another. But when asked to love our enemy and pray for those who mistreat us and to forgive those who harm us, that is a different matter. We might even feel like this is an impossible teaching to follow. Just is hard to do. We're not used to that. It is very easy to fall into the don't get angry. It is very easy to fall into the don't get angry, get even attitude of our world today, and a mentality that exists. I'd like to illustrate that mentality of get angry, don't get angry, get even, with a story. During the Korean War, a group of American GIs decided to hire a young Korean boy to clean up around the barracks where they lived and to prepare meals for them. The boy who they hired had a delightful personality. Always upbeat, easygoing, always a big smile on his face. And no matter what the soldiers did, he only smiled and he continued to work. So the soldiers decided they would compete to see who could make the boy angry by playing practical jokes on him. One time they nailed his shoes to the floor of the barracks. But the boy simply took out some pliers, pulled up the nails, and he smiled and he kept on with his work. Another time, they put a pail of water on the door so that when the boy came in, the water fell on him and completely drenched him. No ideas for the kids here, okay? But he dried himself off, smiled, and continued doing his chores. They tried one practical joke after another, never with an angry response from the young boy. Finally, they felt embarrassed about their whole project and decided it needed to stop. So they called the boy in and they said, "You have such a wonderful personality, such a forgiving nature, that we are not going to do any more practical jokes." And the boy said, "No more jokes?" "No more," they said. "No more nails in shoes?" "No more," they said. "No more water on the door?" "No more," they said. "Good," the boy said. "Then no more spit in the soup." Don't get angry, get even. There are many ways, unfortunately, of getting even. Often it takes the form of withholding love or breaking off communication, the good old silent treatment. Is it not this action that often destroys families and friendships? We don't talk anymore. We hold a grudge. This way of acting might explain why there is so much violence in our cities and in our country. Somebody is betrayed in a business operation. Someone cheats in a marriage relationship. Some kind of thievery occurs, and the offended person has a gun and uses it. There they say, "Now we are even." All too often, when we are hurt, we hurt back in return. When someone hates us, we hate in return. When someone approaches us with violence, we respond with even greater violence. Responding to hurt in kind is the most common response in our world today, personally, interpersonally, and internationally. Now, if Dr. Phil was here, he would say, "And how's that working for you? How is violence working for us? How is anger working for us? How is getting even with someone working for us?" Jesus' teaching offers an alternative. Jesus' teaching calls us to break that ever-escalating cycle of hurt, hatred, and violence. Jesus dares to tell us that if we are hurt, we should not respond in hurt, but instead forgive. If someone hates us, we should not hate in return, but should instead seek the way of love. When someone treats us violently, we should not match that violence, but instead choose nonviolence. Jesus doesn't mean that we should get away from violence. That Jesus doesn't say that we should accept really false, ungood, terrible things that may happen to our lives. But he does say we've got to let it go at some point, move away from it. Loving your enemy is not an easy teaching, but before we say that it is impossible, we had better think again, especially when we realize the alternative is insanity. That when we continue to escalate and escalate, it only ends in insanity. I'd like to conclude with this, a few more lines from the poem, The Paradoxical Commandments. And it's these lines: "The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. People favor underdogs, but follow only top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. Give the world the best you have and you will get kicked in the teeth. Give the best you have anyway." Remember, people can be illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered, but like Jesus taught us, love them anyway.